Howdy y'all. Today we're going to be covering solid flat shapes. The main points we're going to be covering today is how to select a size for your shape, how to make your shape within the technique that I'm going to show you today, how to create consistent prep work so that all of your shapes are the same size and consistency, and how to plan and create custom shapes, whether that be symmetrical or abstract. All right, here are the items that you'll need to participate alongside me during this demo. The first thing is a circle template. Now you can find these at any art store. It's going to be in the drawing section, usually next to the pencils. So here's the thing. This template will decide the size of your shapes. So be aware of that the diameter of the circle is the size of the shape that you will make. The second thing you're going to need is a ruler. Now this is going to connect the points that you're going to make alongside your circle to make the shapes that you desire. Now keep that in mind. Those points are very important to create symmetrical, even, and consistent shapes. The third thing is glass shears. Now these aren't expensive glass shears. These are actually bone shears that you can buy at any supermarket. Mine were $5. They work amazing. I highly recommend them. The fourth thing that you're going to need is a carving tool. And I happen to use a butter pate knife. I bought it at a thrift store, $1. And I always recommend, if you're going to look for carving tools and expensive ones, go to thrift stores. The next thing that we're going to need is a clear punty. I don't have one of those at hand, so I got to go pick one up. Now these clear punties are going to be to hold on to the shape, but also to eventually rake off any excess glass that we have left over from cutting. That'll be important later on, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. And last but certainly not least is going to be our pencil and eraser. I also included a picture of my little ducky pencil sharpener because you'll need to sharpen your pencil obviously. But this is what we're going to use to draw on our shapes and our circles to our kiln shelf, our work surface. So how do you select a size and create consistency within your shapes? So we're going to go over some main bullet points. We're going to select a circle size from our template. Now the diameter of the circle is going to be the size of our eventual shape. After we decide what size, we're going to draw that circle onto our kiln shelf or workspace. We're going to mark the degrees of the circle. Here you can see we have 90, 180, 270, and 360. These points are also known as north, south, east, and west if you want to think about it that way, but we're going to need to think about the numbers because it's going to come in handy. From there, we're going to use the degrees and ruler to draw the shape inside the circle. Once our shape is drawn, we're going to mark the points that we're going to use to then put lines between points as the visual aids with our scoring knife to eventually cut off the excess glass. I know that sounds like a ton of information, but don't worry. As soon as you see me do it, you're going to go, oh, easy peasy lemon squeezy, no problem at all. So let's talk about the degrees of a circle. So we're going to start out with 360, 90, 180, and 270. The half of that, so in between each one, halfway point, is 45, 135, 225, and 315. Now there's halfway points between each one of those, and those can be used for different shapes like a rectangle, but these 8 are going to be the most common degrees that you would use in a circle to create the most basic shapes. The reason why it's important to denote the degrees of your circle on your work surface is because you want every single line segment to be either the correct size or the same size as the rest of the lines. You don't want to get through a whole project and realize that one line was just a little off or a little short, and now visually there's nothing you can do to go in and fix it without adding or subtracting. All right, so let's get to it. I'm going to be choosing my largest circle so it's easy for you guys to see. That's a 3-inch circle, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw my circle down onto my whiteboard, and then I'm going to mark my 90, 180, 270, and 360 degrees so that I'm able to visually tell where I will be connecting my lines. The first shape we're making today is a square, and I know because of the way that the points are oriented on our circle, it's going to look like a diamond, but trust me, a square is a diamond with equal sides. When you elongate the sides, that's when you achieve a diamond. So, though it looks like it, this is a square because each side is equal parts. So the reason that we go through all this prep work is so now after you have your score lines in your prep puck, you can now just easily cut through the glass and make a shape very simply and be able to execute it time and time and time again. So what I'm trying to get is for you to be able to make the same shape the same way 100 times and get the exact same product each time. So for a triangle, we're going to be using the halfway points between 90, 180, 225, and 360, which is 45, 135, 225, and 315. So we're going from 90 to 225 and from 90 to 315. And then we're going to connect 315 to 225. And that is going to make your triangle shape. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out there, but I'm just explaining from which point to the other that I'm connecting my lines from. And I'm sorry I keep erasing my lines every time I do them. I'm not doing that on purpose. So now what we're going to do is make a rectangle. And for a rectangle, you have your main 4. Then you mark the in-between of each one of those, so your main 8. And so we are going to mark an additional 4. So we're going to be marking 60, 120, 240, and 300. And so what we're going to do is now connect those lines. So from 60 to 120, 240 to 300, 120 to 240, and 60 to 300. And now you have a rectangle. And I know you can't see a lot on the top and bottom of that rectangle, but there will be glass on the top and bottom of that. And another part of this process is making sure that your puck is the right size for the diameter of circle that you chose to make the item. That is going to be extremely important. So for this last shape, I just chose something random. I just decided to choose a circle that was 1/4 of the size of the circle and go around each one adding a loop. And when I were to carve it out and to cut it out, it would kind of make a star shape. But the thing is, you can play with these degree points and any type of lines or any type of designs that fit within them, and any type of abstract lines or abstract shapes that fit within them. You can do pretty much anything that you want. Not everything has to be symmetrical. Not everything has to be perfect, crisp, or clean. I just want you to have the ability to do so if you want to. Otherwise, making shapes can be very freeing. You can add, subtract, you can cut, and you can weld things together to make whatever shape that you desire. So now that we've talked about how to make shapes within our circles and what we're looking for and how to design a shape within it, let's talk about how to make a basic puck for our shapes. The first thing you're going to do is gather back a ball of glass. The next thing you're going to do is press your glass between your L marver and your paddle, or in between your mashers, to make a round puck. Once that puck is made, you'll bring it down to your workspace and you'll then put clear nibs on every point that you're going to use as a marker for your carving lines. Then you will carve with your carving knife into the glass and connect the lines from each point. Depending on where your handle is, you may need to transfer it to a different part of your puck for easier cutting on your shape. When your puck is prepped, you're going to take it and lay it on top of your pre-made design on your workspace. That's when you'll take your clear rod and you'll add the clear nibs on each point that you're going to be taking your knife and scoring from and then to. So this is what your puck will look like with the clear nibs on it, one nib being the handle itself. So you take your scoring knife and follow from one to the next, carving in the design into the puck. Because the first one we're making is a square, we're going to carve in the square lines into this puck. So a part that I want to go over is you want to take off the glass that's farthest away from your handle, so that when you finish off half of your shape, you can then readjust your handle and put it on the back side, flip the handle, and then carve the new front side of your shape. And I know it's upside down right now just because of how the whiteboard is oriented, but that's the new front side of your shape. So after you'd cut those off, then you can go in and reshape it or clean it up and then switch the handle back to the other side if you want to, but I'm just going to put the handle back on the original side just to show you that now we have our finished square shape. So the next one I'm demonstrating is a rectangle. So we're going to put our clear nibs on the outside of our puck. Then we're going to take our carving knife and we're going to carve in the lines on the glass. So for the rectangle in specific, I wanted to talk about how when you make a shape, if you're going to be cutting a very long section of a shape, that's going to be the first one that you want to cut. So you want to cut either side of this rectangle because you can sure up those sides. And then whenever you cut across the rectangle, it'll clean it up really nicely. It'll make that shorter section very sharp, very clean, and it'll look really nice. If you try and cut those first and then cut the long sections, you're gonna pull these really long corners down and out away from the shape. So do the long sides first and then the short sides. Something I mentioned earlier in the video is whenever you cut shapes, sometimes you're going to be left with a little excess blob of glass. That glass comes from when you cut from one way and the opposite way. The opposite way will sometimes push glass down and back into a shape. And so what we're going to want to do is pull it out and away from the shape. So we'll take a clear rod, heat right on top of that mass while trying to avoid getting behind the shoulder of that mass to avoid creating a divot. And once you've heated the top of that mass, you'll take your rod and pull it out and away. And that'll leave a very nice, crisp, clean line for any of your shapes. So the reason that we're trying to pull up, out, and away from our shape and encourage the glass to come towards the tip of the shape is because if we try to work it back into the shape, we're just going to muddy the sides of the wall. You can do it, but it is very difficult to pull back down into the opposite end of that side. The last thing I want to cover is to always anneal your shapes. It lowers the chance of checks or cracks. It adds durability and resilience. Once they've already been annealed, you have strengthened them. From personal experience, trust me, you do not want to put all this time and effort into making these wonderful shapes just to have them pop, check, or crack. It is the worst feeling in the world. So go ahead and always anneal or at least slow down the process of your cooling to ensure that your pieces will have a better chance of making it into really fun, interesting projects. Alrighty, thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed the whiteboard demo on how to make flat shapes.